a new day dawning, the time is at hand, where the glory of the Lord will be revealed to every man. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in.
All right, let the King of Glory in. Open up the door. Starts right now. So fling wide you heavenly gates and prepare the way of the risen Lord. The Apostle John was on the island of Patmos. He was in prison for the testimony of Jesus Christ, and he heard a sound behind him, and he said, behold, I looked. There was a door standing open in heaven, and I heard a voice which was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, come up here, and I will show you the things which must take place. That's what we need, my friends. We need a heavenly perspective of the things that are going on in the world around us, the things that the Word of God foretold us would come to pass, those things which must take place, those things which are taking place even now. That is what this broadcast is all about, discussing the issues of the day, discerning the times in which we live from a biblical perspective and worldview. Good afternoon, everybody. Andy White here, and what you are about to hear is the fusion of heart, mind, and soul. And I want to welcome everybody from all across the fruited plain and all around the spherical globe. Yes, it is, folks. It's a spherical globe. It's round. Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Open Up the Doors. Hey, do me a favor. I am live streaming over on my Facebook Open Up the Doors page. Go on over there to facebook.com/faithfm 91.7. Join in the conversation over there. Greet one another. Say hello. Give everybody a wave. Give me some thumbs up and give me some hearts over there on the Open Up the Doors Facebook page. Share it around your streams. I would appreciate it so much. You can also follow me if you would like. I'm on CloudHub and Parler, two social media platforms. CloudHub and Parler. You can follow me on either one or both if you'd like at AJ White 777. That's CloudHub and Parler at AJ White 777. You can also email me if you'd like to correspond with me at AJ White 777 at iCloud.com. That is my email address. I'll say it again, AJ White 777 at iCloud.com. We are, of course, this Faith FM radio broadcast is being streamed here, actually going over the airways here on the east end of Long Island. But if you are outside of the, the broadcast area here on the east end of Long Island, best way to listen to Faith FM is to download the Faith FM app. Free app. Just go over to your respective app stores, whether it's the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. Look up Faith FM Sag Harbor. Download the free app, and you'll be able to listen to great Christian programming 24/7 all across the fruited plain, all around the spherical globe. Okay, I think that pretty much sums up my preliminaries for the week. So let me get to my my huge agenda here. I'm going to begin this way. About 2 weeks ago, the State Department came out and accused the Russians. You might have heard about this. Our government accused the Russians of preparing to engage in a false flag operational hoax. Without providing any proof or evidence, the State Department said the Russians were putting together a fake video of Ukrainians attacking Russians on the border, and then the Russians would use that as an excuse to invade Ukraine. And of course, the Russians have denied that and are accusing the United States of engaging in their own provocations toward war. And as we all know, it's really got me thinking. We all know that the left in this country has always accused the other side, namely the right, the Republicans, the conservatives. We know that they always accuse the other side of doing what they themselves are doing or about to do. So I am wondering, what is our own government up to? What are they planning? I'm saying all that for a reason. Of course I am. Earlier this week, in light of all these other things, Department of Homeland Security put out a bulletin notifying all the federal and state agencies of a heightened security alert. oddly enough, it really hasn't gotten much attention at all in the media. Now, I've read the whole thing. You can find it online. I've read the whole DHS bulletin on this heightened security alert. And I'm going to, in this broadcast, or at least in the first block anyway, I'm going to give you my analysis of some of it. Now, I need to say this before I begin. I want to say this is going to be my analysis of what I read from this DHS memo, this bulletin, because I don't have any inside information. I wish I did, but what I'm going to give you in this first block is based on my own critical thinking. I don't have any behind the scenes knowledge. Of course, I wish I did. I wish I had somebody on the inside that could feed me some information. I really do. But I need to say all that because this analysis is solely going to be based on my own observations of all the other empirical observations of the political machinations that we've all been seeing going on all around us. You see, I engage in a lot of critical thinking. I engage in a lot of analysis. Sometimes my wife tells me I overanalyze everything, but it's just the way I'm wired. But I want to give you some highlights from this DHS bulletin. Because again, you haven't heard about this in the media at all. But it's a heightened alert bulletin, a heightened security alert for the United States. It opens up this way. The United States remains in a heightened threat environment fueled by several factors, including an online environment filled with false or misleading narratives and conspiracy theories, and other forms of dis, and malinformation introduced and or amplified by foreign and domestic threat actors. I mean, folks, the introductory paragraph raises concerns in me about their intentions immediately. The DHS report goes on to say this: these threat actors seek to exacerbate societal friction, to sow discord, and undermine public trust in government institutions to encourage unrest, which could potentially inspire acts of violence. Mass casualty attacks and other acts of targeted violence conducted by lone offenders and small groups acting in furtherance of ideological beliefs and or personal grievances posed on what they perceive as ongoing threats to the nation. Now, this is the opening introduction to the threat assessment, and then they break it down into specific items, which I will elucidate on. The report goes on to say, under a heading, key factors contributing to the current heightened threat environment include, number one, the proliferation of false or misleading narratives, which sow discord or undermine public trust in U.S. government institutions. For example, this is a bulleted point in this memo. For example, there is widespread online proliferation of false or misleading narratives regarding unsubstantiated widespread election fraud. There they go, using that word unsubstantiated again. They got all these buzzwords they like to throw around: unsubstantiated, misinformation, malinformation, disinformation, equity. These are the buzzwords. These are their dog whistles. But they go on to say that there's all this widespread online proliferation regarding unsubstantiated widespread election fraud and COVID-19. Grievances associated with these, listen to this, grievances associated with these themes inspired violent extremist attacks during 2021. Now, when I read that, I immediately paused and I said to myself, wait a minute. This just reinforces the fact that they continue to want to beat the drums of what they keep calling the January 6th insurrection, but what I've called their Reichstag moment, the great setup. They are continuing to use January 6th as of 2021 as an excuse to undermine and erode our constitutional rights and set themselves up for more authoritarian control. But notice the interwoven themes in that statement, because it not only brings to mind January 6th by inference, but it's a direct attack on the free flow of information and free speech on the internet, because that's what they're focusing on. But it gets even worse. It goes on to say, malign foreign powers have and continue to amplify these false or misleading narratives in efforts to damage the United States. I almost laughed when I read that line, actually, because that has always been true. There's nothing new there. The Russians, the Chinese, and every other foreign entity or enemy you can name has always propagandized their adversaries. Our government does it as well in their countries. That's just par for the course. Nothing new there. What I do find intriguing is the almost juvenile sense in the way the DHS has promoted it here. It's almost like I can hear them whining. They're making up stuff about me, Mommy. The Russians are making up stuff. The Chinese, they're making up stuff about me, Mommy. They're making me look bad. I'm serious, folks. When I read that, this is exactly how I was seeing it. Because they're trying to blame foreign entities of exploiting what's going on here, in our government, in our nation, which is something that always happens, as I said a moment ago. But in reality, hear me out, because this is the point. In reality, it's our own government is doing that to themselves. We don't trust them, not because of foreign propaganda, but because of what we see them doing with our very own eyes. Hello? They openly lie. They gaslight us, and then they treat us like we're not able to think for ourselves. They flagrantly break U.S. law and constantly seek to undermine and work around, that's their terminology, work around the Constitution. Just a couple of months ago, when they tried to get OSHA to oversee and enforce Joe Biden's vax mandate. Well, what's his name? I think his name is Klein, the chief of staff at I think his name is Klein, Biden's chief of staff. He was the one who said we need to have a work around the Constitution, because they knew the vax mandates weren't constitutional. So he said, we'll use OSHA as a quote unquote workaround. And when the Supreme Court saw that in the record, they said there is no workaround in the Constitution. But this is what they try and do, folks. This is what they are doing. And they wonder why we don't trust them anymore. They're going to blame the foreign powers? No, they're doing it to themselves. They wonder why we have lost faith in our government institutions when they have weaponized the IRS against conservatives for years now, when they have called American parents just recently domestic terrorists simply for standing up for their kids at school board meetings. What do they expect? What do they expect? Just a few weeks ago, a poll was released by Rasmussen, which found that nearly half of all American voters surveyed consider the FBI, which was once the nation's premier law enforcement agency. But now, in a new poll, a majority of Americans feel that the FBI is no better than a band of quote-unquote politicized thugs. That's terrible. Politicized thugs. And I agree with that assessment, by the way. The poll found that Americans believe the FBI is politicized thugs on par with the president's, again, quote unquote, personal Gestapo. And it isn't at all hard to figure out why. We've all been seeing it for over 5 and 6 years now. The Clintons break the law and get away with it. Former FBI Director Jim Comey breaks the law and weaponizes the FBI against the Trump campaign and gets away with it. James Clapper, John Brennan, all these deep state miscreants that I've been talking about for almost 8 years on this broadcast now. We've all seen them get away with their corruption and their lawlessness and their workarounds on the Constitution. The FBI has had in possession for a couple of years now a laptop, BLM, Biden's laptop matters. They've had this laptop in their possession for several years now. This Hunter Biden's laptop contains a mountain, not just a mountain range of evidence of criminal conduct that would have put him away if he had only had a different last name. Oh, let me think. If it wasn't Hunter Biden, maybe if the person's laptop was, say, something like, I don't know, Donald Trump Jr., or Eric Trump, or Ivanka Trump, maybe if the last name wasn't Biden and the last name was Trump, oh, it would be all over the media. Oh, they'd be in jail by now. Oh, everything would have been exposed by now. No, but the FBI, the DOJ, they just sit on this laptop like a mother hen. So let me say it again. Let me remind the DHS, Department of no, they're not holy at all. Department of Homeland Security. It's not foreign actors who are undermining our trust and faith in our government institutions. It's your own actions. The DOJ in today's America is no longer interested in equal justice under the law. It has shown itself to be as inept, incompetent, and corrupt as the Democrat communists who are controlling them. Now under Merrick Garland, who has literally sicked the FBI, again I'll say it, an agency generations of Americans were brought up to admire and once did. But Merrick Garland has now sicked the FBI and parents whose only quote-unquote crime against the state has been to show up at school board meetings to demand that their children not be exposed to pornographic filth and leftist indoctrination while attending public schools. And then he lied to Congress about it. Okay, but let me get back to the DHS threat alert memo. And I'm not going to have the time to read through the entire bulletin. I will post it in the links. When we have the post-production video up of this broadcast, I will put in the comments section a lot of links for what I'm reporting to you today. But I do need to highlight a few things because, again, it almost seems to me, and here's where I'm really going with all this. When I read this heightened security alert memo, it almost seems to me that they are laying the groundwork for an excuse to usher in more authoritarian and unconstitutional measures. You might want to ask yourself, are they preparing themselves a false flag incident? That's why I opened up with what I said at the top of the broadcast about them accusing Russia of engaging in a false flag operation. I'm serious, folks. I don't put that past our own government. I think they might be up to something very nefarious. What are they planning? What are they planning? That's the question in my head. That's the question in my heart. And I do want to be careful here. I do want to be careful here because I am not by nature a conspiracy theorist type of a person. Those of you who are my long-term listeners, you know that. My long-time listeners know that I eschew conspiracy theories. But what I'm doing right now is simply asking the questions in a rhetorical manner based upon my sense of how I read this DHS bulletin and the feelings I was getting in my gut from it. Are they planning something? What are they up to? I mean, am I just being paranoid? I don't know. Maybe I'm just being paranoid. But I don't think so. We've got a track record with these people now for a couple of years. And I simply can't get over the feeling that they are taking the next steps in their, what I've been calling their Operation Reichstag. Let me get back to the memo before I get to a break. Again, under the heading, key factors contributing to the current heightened threat environment include, number 2, continued calls for violence directed at U.S. critical infrastructure, soft targets, and mass gatherings, faith-based institutions such as churches, synagogues, and mosques, institutions of higher education, racial and religious minorities, government facilities, and personnel, including law enforcement and military. That one I almost laughed at. They're worried about heightened threat against law enforcement and military. These same people that have been impugning and maligning our police force. These same people that have been seeking to defund. They got the audacity to put out a threat assessment against law enforcement. Really? I mean, the cognitive dissonance is off the charts. But again, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I can't. I'm going to go over a bunch of just going to bypass a bunch of their bulleted their bullet points. Again, I'll get this up in the comments later on. But one of the ones I wanted to highlight here in their bulleted points, they report this. As COVID-19 restrictions continue to decrease nationwide, this is the one that really jumped out at me. As COVID-19 restrictions continue to decrease nationwide, increased access to commercial and government facilities and the rising number of mass gatherings could provide increased opportunities for individuals looking to commit acts of violence to do so, often with little or no warning. Meanwhile, COVID-19 mitigation measures, particularly COVID-19 vaccine and mask mandates, have been used by domestic violent extremists to justify violence since 2020. That's an outright lie. That's just an outright lie. But they go on, and these extremists could continue to inspire the lifting of these lockdowns, the lifting of these mandates could continue to inspire these extremists to target government, healthcare, and academic institutions that they associate with those measures. This is alarming, folks, because it almost sounds to me like they are bemoaning the lifting of lockdowns and a return to normalcy and to freedom. They're actually bemoaning it. They're worried about it. They're worried about the right to association and free assembly. You know, those constitutional rights and freedoms that we have as a free people. And it's curious to me that they say the vax and mask mandates have caused domestic violent extremists to justify violence since 2020 and could continue to inspire these extremists to target blah, 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 blah. What are they referring to exactly? What are they referring to? The only violence and rioting we've been seeing for the last 2 years have been from Antifa and BLM mobs burning down businesses and police stations and federal buildings, and they weren't protesting vax and mask mandates. I don't recall any violent mask and vax mandate riots. Do you? Because I don't. To tell you the truth, what are they getting at here? What are they getting at? We need to ask the question. The bulletin goes on to say this, quote, domestic violent extremists have also viewed attacks against U.S. critical infrastructure as a means to create chaos and advance ideological goals, and have recently aspired to disrupt U.S. electric grids and communications critical infrastructure, including by spreading false or misleading narratives about 5G technology. Domestic violent extremists have been targeting the grid. Folks, the FBI and the DHS have known for years there are Iranian sleeper cells in the U.S., but they don't mention that. They say domestic violent extremists. What about all these Iranian sleeper cells that they know are in the United States? Our southern border has become a turnstile for every foreign enemy who wants to come in, as well as the drug cartels. And they're worried about domestic terrorists? Just the other night, was it last night? Might have been 2 nights ago. Jesse Waters has a new show on Fox at 7 o'clock, Jesse Waters Primetime. And he had a whistleblower on the other night, a Border Patrol official whistleblower, talking about how our own government is coordinating with the drug cartels. Let that sink in. She went on national TV to report and expose the fact that our own government, the Biden administration, is coordinating with drug cartels. It's utterly maddening. Some domestic violent extremists, the bulletin goes on to say, have continued to advocate for violence in response to false or misleading narratives about unsubstantiated election fraud. Here we go. They're continuing the January 6th thing. They keep calling it the big lie. No. The election fraud is not the big lie. The big lie has been everything that they've been doing. The only one spreading information and the big lie is the government through their media sycophants. But the DHS report memo, bulletin, Heightened Security Bulletin, says the months preceding, that would be now, the months preceding, the months preceding the upcoming 2022 midterm elections could provide additional opportunities for these extremists and other individuals to call for violence directed at democratic institutions, political candidates, let that one sink in, violence against political candidates they are warning against, party offices, election events, and election workers. This is another false narrative that they want to perpetuate. And I think there's a reason for it. I need to take a break. But before I take a break, my sense of this whole thing is they concentrate more on so-called domestic terrorists and agitators than they do on foreign ones. And when they do mention foreign ones, it's more to undergird the feeling that they were just exacerbating and exploiting what the so-called domestic terrorist threats are. They seek to blame foreign actors on undermining the American people's trust in their institutions. But I'll say it again, no, they've done that themselves. Folks, I really do believe, you can call me whatever you want to call me, but this is my gut feeling. This is my sense of what I get from reading this. I really do believe they are planning something very wicked and very evil. And then they will either blame it on the Iranians or the conservatives or whomever will fit the narrative that they are scripting, depending on the incident. But we need to keep asking the questions. Just what is the deep state up to? What are they planning? I have my ideas and I have my thoughts, but I'm not going to publicly say them. I'm just not ready to publicly say some of the things that I believe could be in the works. I will say this before I go to break. We need to be observant. We need to be alert. We need to question everything this government is saying to us, because I'm sorry to say they're not to be trusted. And you need to be ready and prepared. And that's really been my baseline message for 5 years now. Be ready. Be prepared for whatever may come. That's the message of what I'm getting at here on Open Up the Doors. But I'll be right back. Here's a tune by Casting Crowns. Shadow of Your Wings. Stick around.
Oh God, you are my God, and earnestly I seek
you. Casting Crowns. Shadow of Your Wings. Welcome back. Andy White here. You are listening to Open Up the Doors, Integrity in Broadcasting here on Faith FM. WEGB 90.7 and 93.3 in Epi, WEGQ 91.7 in Quag. I had to play that tune just because I needed some uplifting music. I needed to take a little bit of a mental break from the stuff I was sharing in the first block. Needed to come up for air. But you know what, folks? On another note, it's now time for something I haven't done in a long time. It's time for a Theater of the Absurd update. Yes, my friends, when you hear the sound of the carnival carousel, when you hear the cranking of the melodious circle barrel organ, that can only mean one thing. It's time for a Theater of the Absurd news update. Real news stories that would make a carnival clown show jealous with seething green envy. So step right up and give an ear. Theater of the Absurd updates. Brought to you by 8 Clowns and a Mini Cooper, LLC. So welcome to another Theater of the Absurd episode. It's been some time, but this is the Theater of the Absurd episode where crack pipes matter under Joe Biden's Build Crack Better executive order. Yes, folks, build crack better. I said that correctly. Last week, the Washington Free Beacon reported on the story, which was absolutely true. But the headline ran as such: Biden administration to fund crack pipe distribution to advance racial equity. A $30 million program will provide smoking kits to vulnerable communities. Now, in this program, not only smoking kits will be provided, syringes will be provided, all kinds of things to help drug addicts take their drugs more safely. Now, I want to say this, folks, because everything in the Washington Free Beacon report, everything was factually accurate and true. But the leftist media went absolutely into apoplectic tantrums, stating that those facts were misinformation, that the report wasn't true. But notwithstanding the false fact-checking sites like Snopes, which blatantly, originally, because now they've changed, Snopes changed their reporting on this. But originally, Snopes said that the executive order had nothing to do with racial equity, even though the name of the order actually has those very words in it. Snopes still claimed it was false. But in the title of Joe Biden's Executive Order 13985, under which the federal grant that we're going to talk about in a moment is purpose, the title of the executive order is this. And you can find this on the government website. I will give you as well the link to this. The title of Joe Biden's executive order is Advancing Racial Equity and Support for Underserved Communities through the Federal Government. And yet Snopes, those highly integritous fact checkers, said that wasn't true. Guess they didn't do their homework. Because Snopes, along with all the other fact checkers out there, flat out lied. The leftist media mafia lies, folks, and we need to call them out on it. Because needless to say, when one reads the executive order, which I did, when one goes and reads the grant, and I read parts of it, it's too long and boring, but I did scan some parts of the grant itself. It's needless to say that the inference was that the Biden administration wants to advance racial equity by handing out drug paraphernalia. That's the inference. Because isn't that what Joe Biden himself thinks about racial equity? I mean, really. Stick with me, folks, because these things are connected. Remember when Joe Biden, back in the campaign, during the campaign of 2020, Joe Biden asked an African-American reporter if he was a junkie? Remember that? He asked him if he was a junkie because the reporter questioned whether he was the vice president, or the former vice president then, Biden. He asked Joe Biden if he had taken a cognitive test in response to attacks targeting his mental health. And Joe Biden rebuked that reporter, claiming that asking the question was similar to asking the interviewer if he was using cocaine. CBS correspondent Errol Barnett prompted the presumptive Democratic nominee, Joe Biden at the time, to clarify if he had taken a test measuring his mental acuity. And then Biden barked back, and this is all over. You can see the video. It's all over the place. No, I haven't taken a test. Why the bleep should I take a test? Come on, man. That's like saying to you, now remember, this is a black reporter. That's like saying to you, before you got on this program, if you had taken a test, were you taking cocaine or not? What do you think, huh? Are you a junkie? Now, it's sort of laughable. That's why it made it into the theater of the absurd this week. Why did Biden say that to a black reporter? Would he have made that remark to a white reporter? Does he think black reporters are crackheads and junkies? I'm just asking for a friend. The interview was conducted as part of a virtual convention of the National Association of Black Journalists and the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. And a Biden campaign official at the time told Politico it was a preposterous question to ask Joe Biden that deserved a response that showed the absurdity of it all. But why? Why was that a preposterous question? These were the same people that were clamoring for Trump to take a cognitive test, which he did, by the way, and passed. So it wasn't an unreasonable question. But let me get back to the present controversy, because I wanted to put this all in context here. The grant monies under Biden's executive order are meant to, quote, support community-based overdose prevention programs, syringe services programs, that's where they give out clean syringes, and other harm reduction services. According to the grant document, which you can access and read online, as I said, funding of up to almost, I'm just going to round off the numbers, almost $10 million per year or up to $30 million over 3 years is available to dozens of these underserved communities. This all reminds me of what Ronald Reagan once said. Government doesn't solve your problems, it subsidizes them. But herein is where the real controversy the past few days lay. According to the information outlined in the program, part of the funding can be used to purchase supplies such as safe smoking kits and FDA-approved overdose reversal medication. These are facts. Yet, posts were removed from Facebook and labeled as misinformation. Posts that were simply reporting these facts, empirical, demonstrable facts. And yet, once again, they keep using that word misinformation. But I don't think that word means what you think it means. The only reason they're calling it misinformation is because it got reported. They got caught, and they simply didn't want anyone to know about it. But here is an update because of all the pushback and because of all the fallout. Here is an update. So now HHS is now saying they're not going to include crack pipes in the safe smoking kits. No. We're not going to include the crack pipes. We'll take them out. Apparently, they're oblivious to the fact it's not the pipe that's killing people, it's the crack. And they're not stopping them. But they're rather enabling them to continue with their drug habits. Listen, folks, these programs have been tried. They've been tried in L.A. They've been tried in San Francisco. They've been tried in cities all over the country, and they have failed miserably. But now the federal government wants to pay for it. Now, they say they're going to not put the crack pipes in now, so now we can all go away, right? I don't believe them for a second anyway, that they won't include the pipe. But that really does miss the point. Why are they facilitating the use of crack or meth or heroin? There's no safe way of using a drug that will ultimately kill you. Now they're saying, just last night I heard this. In fact, Jen Psaki said it yesterday. The smoking kits, these safe smoking kits, will include alcohol wipes and lip balm. I'm not making this up. Jen Psaki said this yesterday. Okay, so they're going to spend $30 million on alcohol wipes and lip balm so crackheads could smoke and, safely. I mean, really, if you believe that, you're on crack. So one person the other day make an interesting statement. She said, the crack pipes are supposed to go to underserved neighborhoods, right? In the upper class, upscale neighborhood, you can't find crack dealers. They're all in the poorest neighborhoods. So are the crack pipes going to Beverly Hills and the Hamptons? They're underserved by crack dealers. Obviously, it was a bit of sarcasm there. Not to mention the fact that a case could be made because these drugs are illegal. These people are supposed to come do their drugs in these safe places, illegal drugs. But a case could be made for entrapment. I mean, crack and heroin is illegal. These people are supposed to bring their own drugs. Now, of course, they won't get arrested because the government's got no interest in, arresting them. But my point is simply this. You don't stop bad behavior by enabling bad behavior. And again, It really goes to something Ronald Reagan said many, many years ago. Reagan said very, very famously, the most terrifying 9 words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." I just have one further question to ask before I go to break. Do I have to be fully vaxxed and boosted to pick up my free crack pipe? The fusion of heart, mind, and soul. This is Open Up the Doors with Andy White here on Faith FM, WEGB 90.7 and 93.3 in Epic, WEGQ 91.7 in Quad. Thanks for joining in, everybody. Got a few minutes left here on this week's edition of Open Up the Doors. I am streaming live over on my Facebook page. If you've never liked my Facebook page, please like the page. Invite people to Open Up the Doors. Please write us some reviews there over on Facebook as well. They got a review section. The more reviews that you write, the more people will see the page. Also, I would like to invite you to please subscribe to my Rumble channel as well as my YouTube channel, although I do want to really push my Rumble channel more and more. I am on both platforms. We will be using Rumble more and more in the future. All our videos get uploaded to both platforms, but sometimes YouTube just doesn't. YouTube just banned stuff. They took down my broadcast a couple of weeks ago. They've taken down others. So I'm pushing for Rumble, and I'm also waiting to see in another several weeks. There's going to be a new platform coming out. I'm sure most of you have heard about it, called Truth Social Network. It's being headed up by former Congressman Dennis Nunes, and I'm waiting for that. I'm most likely, in fact, I'm sure I'm going to be joining the Truth Social Network once it launches in a couple of weeks. They are supposed to be working in cooperation with Rumble, so I'm really hopeful regarding this new platform that will be coming out. Nunes was on, I think it was on Hannity last night. I can't remember who he was on. I saw Nunes last night saying that the new platform should be fully operational by the end of March. I think they're going to begin launching it in a couple of weeks here at the end of February, but he said that the full operational platform will be fully running by the end of March, and I am looking forward to that, seeing how that unfolds. I'm really hopeful for it. In the meantime, like I said, you can subscribe to my Rumble and YouTube channels for our videos. I got a few minutes left, and I want to kind of sum up some of the things I've been getting. And I got all the news stories here, and I know I'm not going to be able to get to them at all. But I want to really connect some dots here about why am I sharing the things I'm sharing. Well, as always, it's about to prepare my listening audience, to prepare you, my brothers and sisters in Christ, for the things that are happening in the world that's going on around us. We can't be walking around living under a rock. We can't be walking around with our heads in the sand. And as I think about and ponder all that I've seen this government do in these last couple of years, I say to myself, what kind of a government does these things to its own people? Well, the answer to that question, sadly enough, is an authoritarian and a totalitarian one. You know, I shared this with a couple of brothers this past week, but there was a time long ago, perhaps I was just young and naive, but there was a time I never would have believed that our own government would do the things against their own people. I now believe they are doing against their own people. But then again, I said, maybe I was just naive. Maybe we shouldn't have been so naive, considering what they did to black Americans for 40 years with the Tuskegee experiments. If you're not familiar with the Tuskegee experiments, I urge and encourage you to look it up, Google it. Find out about the Tuskegee experiments. The government is capable of doing anything if they can get away with it. Psalm 91:7 says, the wicked shall be turned into hell, and all the nations that forget God. I quoted this from Alexander Solzhenitsyn just a couple of weeks ago. That was one of the videos that YouTube took down. But the quote is still reverberating in my spirit. Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, over a half century ago, when I was still a child, I recall hearing a number of old people offer the following explanation for the great disasters that had befallen Russia. Men have forgotten God, they said. That's why all this has happened. Indeed, men have forgotten God. And governments that forget God, as the scripture says, will be turned into hell. Psalm 9:17. All the nations that forget God will be turned into hell. Hell on earth for the citizens, and ultimately a literal hell. The evil cabal of political elites, no doubt, have been around from time immemorial, lying to the peons below them. Again, as Solzhenitsyn so astutely said, we know they're lying. They know they're lying. They know that we know they're lying. We also know that they know that we know they're lying. But they still lie. When the righteous are in authority, we read in Proverbs, the people rejoice. But when a wicked man rules, the people groan. This is why our Constitution is so important. This is what has made America an exceptional nation in its ideals. Because we're not meant to be a nation run by men, but a nation of laws. Our founding fathers knew what they were doing when they constructed the Constitution. They knew that evil lurks in the corrupt hearts of power-hungry political leaders and officials. And that's why they were so insistent upon framing a constitutional republic with a Bill of Rights. The first Constitution draft didn't have a Bill of Rights, and there are several people, a couple of people in particular, that refused to sign it until it contained a Bill of Rights. Rights that are given to us not by the government, but natural rights given to us by God. Because we're not to be governed by any earthly king, but by law. Lex Rex, they called it. The law is king. I've talked about that many, many times. And we are to be a nation ruled by laws and not by men. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Let me say that again. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, not some king, not some monarch. And that's why we have a government now that seeks to destroy the Constitution, because they want to be kings. They want to be monarchs. So much is going on here. I only got a couple minutes left. One of the new programs, I'll just touch upon this. One of the new programs the Justice Department is putting together is a unit to counter, here we go, a unit to counter domestic terrorism. Well, I thought that was just called policing. No, now they want to make a unit. I don't know, let's call it the Stasi, I don't know. Maybe the Stasi, the Gestapo, the SS. You see, domestic terrorism, folks, is now a catch-all term used by many in government to justify political intimidation and persecution. Department of Justice representatives informed a Senate committee of plans to gather a group of select attorneys to form a quote-unquote domestic terror unit in light of, guess what? In light of January 6, 2021, noting that its number of investigations of alleged domestic terrorists have more than doubled since the spring of 2020. Yeah, they're locking up grandmas and grandpas just for showing up at the Capitol that day, and that's a fact. Now, Obviously, the January 6th attack involved acts of political violence carried out by some nut jobs, carried out by some, let's say some Antifa people, let's say some BLM people, let's say some FBI people that were working undercover because they have it on video. Anybody can say the name Ray Epps. But it hasn't been linked, and the FBI said this, believe it or not. The own FBI report said that January 6th was not linked to any broader organized threat to the country, raising more questions as to what exactly does a new terror unit in response mean. While admitting there is no single federal crime, and there isn't, labeled domestic terrorism, a DOJ official promised to invoke a criminal code. They're just going to write up some laws by fiat. That's what he's saying. He's going to invoke a criminal code that allows enhanced sentences for certain crimes listed as terror offenses. Now, what could a terror offense be? I don't know. Maybe a grandma or a mother going to a Board of Education meeting. We've been seeing this stuff going on. I wish I could go on. I'm almost out of time. But these people, the government is going towards thought crimes. That is where this is heading. Thought crimes, associations, those kind of things. I don't know exactly what it is they're planning. But I have a deep sense in my gut and spirit they're planning something very big and very wicked. And they will blame whatever it is on some other entity of their choosing, whether it be perceived as Trump supporters or whether it's the Iranians or whoever, depending on exactly what that false flag operation might be. They will tailor it to fit into the narrative that they are scripting. Nevertheless, beloved, see that you walk circumspectly in these days, not as fools, but as wise, because the days are evil. In the meantime, I gotta go. Watch, stand fast in the faith, be brave, be strong, and let all that you do be done in love. Thanks for joining in.